Community wealth building, it's always a popular topic, I think. Unfortunately, one of our speakers today had cancelled, but we know it's still going to be a great session, and we're delighted to be welcoming Mhairi from North Ayrshire Council and also Gemma from Whale Arts to be talking about community wealth building. I think they'll be giving us different perspectives around the community wealth building agenda, which is great. And as what we'll do is I'll bring our speakers on first, and then any questions, if you've got anything in the chat you want to post or ask a particular question, we'll come to those at the end. And do feel free to use either the Q&A or the chat function. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to start by introducing Mhairi Paterson from North Ayrshire Council. So we know North Ayrshire were really one of the early councils looking at the pilot around community wealth building. And it's always great to hear what you're doing and where things are at. And I'm sure there'll also be a bit of a general introduction for those who are perhaps newer to the topic of community wealth building too. So over to you, Mhairi.
Great, thanks very much, Naomi. Really happy to be here, and hopefully everyone can see my slides now.
We can.
Great, that's brilliant, thanks very much. So my name is Mhairi Paterson, Community Wealth Building Co-ordinator at North Ayrshire Council. So just to give you a bit of kind of background and context to community wealth building in North Ayrshire and the kind of things that we've been involved in at the moment and how it's relevant to social enterprises. So, basically, in North Ayrshire, we have done for a long time faced a range of social, economic and environmental challenges in the region. We've struggled to recover from deindustrialisation. We've got a quarter of children living in poverty, high unemployment, one of the lowest job densities in Scotland, and huge swathes of vacant and derelict land across the area. We're also in a state of climate emergency, declared that in 2019. And these all present particular challenges, and we know that there's a clear link between poverty, inequality, and how the economy functions. And traditional forms of economic development, economic growth weren't working for us, and we knew that we needed to take a different approach and tackle poverty and inequality through more preventative measures, and really seeking to develop an economy that's more resilient to economic shocks and changes like we've just come through in the past 2 years, and is more based on well-being and inclusion for all. So essentially, we had to look at different ways of doing things, and we landed on community wealth building. And so some of you might have heard about it before, and it might be new to some of you. It's starting to grow in interest and significance across the UK and in Scotland. So there's lots more information out there if you want to find it. But for a quick intro to it, it's a new economic model about enhancing well-being and inclusion. Seeks to address the structural causes of poverty and inequality by creating more local employment, good quality employment, more diverse and resilient business base, ensuring that wealth is contained locally and benefits local people, so wealth in the form of money, but also in jobs and employment and opportunities as well. So essentially, I would say it's an economic approach. So it uses the economic levers, the powers that certain organisations have to rebalance how the economy works at local scales. So these institutions we call anchor institutions. These are places that are firmly embedded in a particular geography. They buy a lot of services and goods, employ a lot of people, and they own a lot of land, buildings and assets. So these might be councils are obviously one of them, NHS bodies, further and higher education, and other sort of national public bodies as well, like Police Scotland, Fire and Rescue, as well. And these anchor institutions might vary in size or scale and be different to different areas as well. They might include large community organisations as well. So it's really dependent on particular locations. But community wealth building gives a kind of a framework for how these anchor institutions can use their economic power and influence, and it's structured across 5 pillars. So those are listed there. They're about using progressive procurement, fair work and employment, maximising their use of land and assets for the benefit of the community and local businesses, and encouraging more diverse forms of business spaces with more democratic forms of ownership models, and also using their financial power for the investment of communities, and so that they can benefit and develop and grow and reach their aspirations as well. So that's really a quick kind of whistle-stop tour of what community wealth building is, and I'm just going to go on now to tell you about how we've taken it forward in North Ayrshire. We launched our community wealth building strategy in May 2020. And the mission of the strategy is about enhancing local wealth, the creation of fair jobs, maximising the potential of all our places through working in partnership with our communities and our businesses. It's the first community wealth building strategy in Scotland, and it's a long-term strategy from 2020 to 2025, and we've got 55 actions within that strategy, which are aligned to the community wealth building pillars. So quite a long-term approach for us, and really reconfigures how we do things across the whole of the council. And in order to support the strategy, we have brought on 11 new members of staff to support community wealth building. There's also an investment fund to help support businesses and communities as well. And the strategy was developed in cooperation with our partners, local businesses and communities as well. And further demonstration of that partnership working, we also have an Ayrshire Community Wealth Building Commission, which is specifically about collaborating with the major regional anchor institutions, the type of organisations that I mentioned before. So that involves actually 3 Ayrshire local authorities, so East, South and North Ayrshire councils. It includes our NHS, Ayrshire and Arran, Police Scotland, Scottish Fire and Rescue, Scottish Enterprise, Ayrshire College, and also our third sector interface in North Ayrshire, which is called TACT, the Ayrshire Community Trust. So we think it's crucial to have them involved. We've got that link to the third sector there as well. So they've been involved since the beginning as well. So essentially, just to make it a bit more applicable to how community wealth building supports local enterprises and the things that we're doing, particularly in the council. And we're really taking what we call a place-based approach to supporting the communities and local enterprises. So these new staff that I mentioned that have come in are allocated to a particular locality in North Ayrshire. So North Ayrshire is divided into 6 localities, and some of those officers will really develop that kind of place-based understanding, develop strong relationships with the businesses and the communities that are involved, that are based in those localities. So what those officers will be working on is about supporting diverse forms of business ownership, like I mentioned before. So that might be employee ownership, cooperatives, community businesses, social enterprises, with some support for transition as well, to employee ownership or cooperative. Those advisors are also working to support enterprises with tendering for public contracts, developing their own local supply chain opportunities, but also growing that local supply chain that ourselves as anchor institutions can then contract as well, helping businesses with their sustainability goals, and if they want to make any innovative changes to their business, really supporting them with any aspirations that they have. Other things so that's really kind of business facing aspect, some of the things that's happening. But other things that we're doing, we're looking at the feasibility of a community bank, and we know that there's a need for more local and ethical forms of funding that really supports small and medium-sized businesses and has that kind of local knowledge and understanding about the value that kind of investment would have. So we're exploring that as a council, and actually engaging with the Scottish Government on those types of things as well. We're seeking always to increase our knowledge of local suppliers, again, so that we can then spread our wealth, so the services that we have and the goods that we buy amongst local suppliers, like I said, of all types of business ownership. So we need to we also need to identify where there might be gaps in the market and how we could support the development of enterprises into those gaps to create those economic opportunities as well. So one way we're starting to do this just now is we are looking to scope out the capacity of the North Ayrshire third sector. That's looking to identify opportunities and get a real better understanding of the makeup of the third sector, so that they can capitalise on all the opportunities that we have, but also that we can support them in terms of what aspirations are there. And like I said as well, we're working with anchor institutions to grow the local opportunities and match up to where those market opportunities might be, and where the sector can take advantage of the opportunities that the anchors have. So just in terms of how social enterprises can get a bit more involved in community wealth building, and I know that I'm kind of speaking from a North Ayrshire perspective here, but it's also important to note that there's other things going on across Scotland. There's more local authorities looking into community wealth building. They're establishing action plans and strategies. And there's also elements that local authorities will be doing. So I kind of tried to make these a little bit kind of more general, that might support some of the enterprises and kind of signpost to things that they can get involved in their local area. But like I said, community wealth building is about trying to kind of make a more level playing field for a range of SMEs and third sector organisations. So it's really about supporting yourselves to realise what your aspirations and goals are, and if your aspiration is to get into public sector contracts, or also looking about collaborating with other organisations to bid as well. So we definitely encourage that from our perspective, and community wealth building itself, that's kind of fundamental to it as So things like registering with Public Contract Scotland, Supplier Development Programme, Partnership for Procurement, Social Investment Scotland as well. They ran a couple of workshops for ourselves last year. So all of the support from all of these organisations will help you be in a better place to take advantage of opportunities as well. So sorry if this is teaching you to suck eggs, but these are the kind of things that are coming through in the work that we are doing as well. It's also about enterprises themselves looking at developing more local supply chains, looking at what their other organisations in the region or neighbouring regions are doing as well, and looking at these from a kind of sustainability perspective as well. We've got a community benefits wish list in North Ayrshire that we launched in October last year, which is new to us, but other local authorities might have wish lists as well. So this is a kind of a portal for connecting council contractors and suppliers directly with community needs. which may come from social enterprises as well as a range of community organisations as well. So we've got an online portal where communities can submit what their need is, and council contractors, as part of their community benefits commitment, can view the requests and do their part to support any of those needs there as well. So that's starting to get up and running in North Ayrshire, and we've seen some good progress and some good link-ups with that already. So say in your area there might be those types of things there are already kind of or in the process of happening. It's also about looking at what the property and assets needs are of the community and enterprise as well. So seeing what and this is where it connects up to what these anchor institutions do as well. So some might have underutilised assets, properties or spaces that could then meet the needs of the community or enterprises as well. So in North Ayrshire and across Ayrshire, we've got a regional work stream currently looking at that opportunity to see what joining up there could be. So again, it's about seeing what your local area could do for you in terms of meeting your asset needs as well, or co-location or things like that as well. I kind of touched on and said that community wealth building has grown more interest across Scotland. Like I say, other local authorities are looking at it and taking different approaches. Some will focus on certain pillars. There's a lot of focus initially on procurement pillar. So again, about developing local supply chains, community benefits, that types of thing. Because in North Ayrshire, we're kind of trying to address across all of the pillars across the strategy. And Scottish Government recently announced in their programme for government that they would look to bring forward a Community Wealth Building Act. So we're engaging in discussions with Scottish Government as well as other local authorities as well about how we think an act could be designed in order to support community wealth building and support the local authorities taking this forward. And their support working with a number of other local authorities as well to help them develop action plans and to take this forward at a more national scale as well. So it's definitely something that's going to come forward in the next year or so in terms of far more engagement with community wealth building. I think I would also encourage enterprises to approach the local authorities and their anchor institutions, see if they have community wealth building plans or strategies and pipelines, and also engage with their third sector interface as well, because they might be able to have that closer link with the local authorities to engage and influence and co-produce activities is what's happening in North Ayrshire. So just to kind of wrap up from my side of things, but I've just got an example. In the past couple of years, we've worked with our procurement teams and a social enterprise. So we worked between the council, Food for Life Scotland and Woodside Arran, a social enterprise on the Isle of Arran, producing organic food. So we worked with them to bring that locally grown organic food into the school meals for schools on the Isle of Arran. So that's something that continues to this day as well. So it's a good example of working directly with that enterprise in a way that benefits themselves, but also the young people on Arran as well. And we've got there's obviously food that's grown on Arran is being used on Arran for the young people as well. But essentially, community wealth building, it's about seeing procurement as an opportunity and not a barrier, and it encourages to think kind of creatively about doing things differently, and encouraging local suppliers and enterprises to think differently too. We know there's there's regulations around certain things and how we do things, but we can look at what we can do around those. We've installed new kind of processes internally that allows us to engage earlier with local suppliers and support them to come up to the stage where they're suitable to tender for opportunities. That's coming through what the work and the new staff that are doing, and it really helps our local supply base to develop their capacity and take advantage of opportunities that are happening as well. So essentially that kind of gives you a bit of a summary of what we're doing in North Ayrshire, some of the actions that we've got planned and some of the successes we're starting to see through. But I'll stop my slideshow there, and I'm very happy to answer questions later part of the session.
Thank you very much, Maria. It was really interesting to see the presentation. I think before we went live on the webinar, I was saying it's obviously North Ayrshire is one of the first councils, as you said, and I love the case study at the end, because I think for a lot of social enterprises, when this first came out, there was certainly a lot of hope that there was a real path, but obviously it takes time, and there's still a lot of challenges, I think, around things like the procurement agenda. So it was great to have that case study, I think, and also the slide at the end trying to, I guess, give some pointers on how social enterprise organisations can really engage with this agenda. So thank you very much. I've already seen there's some questions coming through for you in the chat, so you'll have a chance to perhaps look at those while our next speaker is coming through, and we'll come to those once Gemma's finished. So I'm delighted to also be joined today by Gemma. Gemma Smith joins us from Whale Arts, but you'll also see that she's got Go Beyond written next to her name on the screen, and that's very much a collaboration of a number of organisations in southwest Edinburgh that have been really focusing on this kind of community wealth agenda as well from their perspective. So I'm delighted to welcome Gemma, and I'm just going to hand straight over to you now. Thank you, Gemma.
Thanks, Naomi. Hi everyone, it's lovely to be here today. It's really nice to virtually meet people. I just wanted to start off by saying, Mhairi, that was a phenomenal presentation. That was really great, and thank you for that great introduction as well to community wealth building as a whole and as a principle. I won't re-go over those things. That was really great, thank you. So hi, my name's Gemma Smith. Thanks for the introduction, Naomi. I work at Whale Arts, but for Go Beyond. Go Beyond is a network across southwest Edinburgh, which was set up during lockdown with the idea to keep everyone connected in southwest Edinburgh and focused together in that. So that is made up by Whale Arts, which is in Wester Hailes, like I said, where my role is based, Space in Broom House, and also the Big Hearts Community Trust, which is in Gorgie Dalry. Sorry, I've lost my place already. I'm so sorry. The network is consistent of different forums. So there's 6 forums that are part of the network. Those are Living Well Wester Hailes, which is in Wester Hailes, Joining the Dots, which is Broom House, the Gorgie Dalry Forum, the Ox Gangs Forum, Pentlands Forum, and also the Voluntary Sector Forum. Quite a lot of names and forums there, as you can imagine. I go to those meetings, so there's quite a lot to get involved in, but it's a really fantastic network. They really have started to build something very strong, with the intention of continuing that on further and bringing some more roles in there to get further involved. In August 2021, just giving a bit of a background about this role and how it came about, in August 2021, Regional City Deals released some money for funding for a role in community wealth building, and that was released through Capital City Partnerships, which I'll come on to talk about a little bit more very soon. This is where the role came about, to do the community wealth building project lead role, which is the one that I'm in. And that's a fixed term post for a year, so it's running August till August. So it's not been too long that we've had the role running. But I'd like to share with you very shortly some of the achievements that we've made so far with that, and some of the future plans that we have to continue that further. We've been working from a very grassroots level. Obviously the community wealth building role was designed and set up to be a grassroots project, and we've really tried to put our focus on that. I work very closely obviously with local authorities etc. But the way that we have done it is we've tried to embed me in the communities and have me working from the grassroots up, which we have certainly noticed has made a very valuable impact. We've been involved in quite a lot of conversations with different organisations and places who've done things slightly differently and have had different impacts and also very, very positive impacts. However, we found this to be the best way so far to go forward, and we plan to continue to do that. The first thing that I'd like to share, and I'm going to screen share here, but there'll be a link coming into the chat. This is for the interim report that we have made for Go Beyond for what's happened so far in the project. Like I'd said, Duncan's kindly going to put the link in the chat, and I would encourage you to have a look through that at your leisure. It is quite a lengthy document, but I would like to think that it would be worth your time to read. So here it is here. I've just got it up in front. Obviously, I'm not going to go through the whole document here with you just now, but this is the interim report. I want to just draw your attention first, if nobody minds, to the first sections, as you'll see. This is where we've sort of put a bit of a list together about various organisations, small networks, community groups, for example, social enterprises, who are already doing a lot of really great community wealth building work in the local southwest area. Please, like I say, feel free to scroll through this, and all of the links that are there, you're able to click on. They're active links. I won't do it just now because it'll take us elsewhere, but they're active links, and that gives you a bit of an understanding about some of the really great work that's already going on. So the next thing that I kind of want to talk about, just from the report, but I'm going to open another link here, is that you'll see here that I've got 2 pieces of work here that are survey results. Now, the very first thing that we decided to do for the project was we wanted to hear from the local community and hear what was working well so far for them, things that could be improved, how could things be done a bit differently. And that's where we started. We put that out at the very beginning. I think it might have been September that we put that out. And once we did that, we got just a really phenomenal response, actually. I'm just going to press escape and hope that I don't escape from the whole thing. Great. Please excuse me for this. So here I just want to show you this was the collation of the survey results that we had. And we found it very, I won't bore you by going through the whole thing, but we found it very interesting just to find out how many people already had heard about community wealth building, how it was impacting people. And as you'll see, we had 53 responses, and the age range mostly was 31 to 60. Most people didn't know what community wealth building was, which is understandable. It's a very new term. We recognise that. I hadn't heard of it before coming into the role myself. And something else that we really found was important to look at, I'm flicking through, was down to the community benefits part. What we noticed and recognised was that so many people didn't know what community benefits were. We spoke to people about this further. We also had comments, which aren't available here, where people had said that they didn't know that this was something that was available to them, but they would be really interested in finding out. So that was something that we wanted to try and make a bit more of a focus on. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now. I'll come back. From the survey as well, we decided that from the 5 pillars that Mhairi mentioned earlier, we wanted to make our focus on 2 of them just now, because this is a short project that we're running. We thought that focusing on all 5 could potentially get a bit complicated. We could end up trying to do too much and not give 100% focus. So we took the survey results to find out what we thought would be most impactful in the local areas that we're working in. And the 2 that we chose were socially productive use of land and property, and also plural ownership of the economy. Now, like I say, that stemmed from the survey results, and a lot of that came through from the local area of Gorgie Dalry, we noticed. The reason for that, coming from the comments as well, was to do with the Tynecastle community asset transfer for Hearts of Midlothian, the football club. Now that has made a massive impact in the local area, which is really, really fantastic. And this is something that Whale Arts, where I'd said that I'm based, has decided to take a bit of thought from, and they're currently going through and have started the process of community asset transfer for the local community to own the land that the building is on. In the surrounding area, there's some derelict kickabout pitches there, which falls us into socially productive use of land and property, which we would like to do some really great things with the community for their ownership and for them to use in the way that they would like to. The next thing I'd like to go on to talk about actually ties again into something that Mhairi was saying. I think you called it your, yes you did, your wish lists. So this was to do with community benefits and how these can be better used within local areas. Now, I've been very, very fortunate to be involved in this project alongside Capital City Partnerships. They had decided that they were going to do something with community benefits. How can we get people to actually be able to obtain things that they really need for their local area, rather than just being told, oh, we're going to put this in with the best intent in the world, but it maybe not being super relevant to the local residents. So they decided to launch, very exciting, just recently, we're just in the initial stages of it, the ESES CRD Communities Portal. So that's the Edinburgh and South East of Scotland City Region Deal Communities Portal. Very, very long title. ESES Portal is what we've reduced it to. Now there's going to be a link coming into the chat for that as well, if anybody would like to have a look on the portal, or of course if anyone would like to go on and make a request. We're referring to them as asks, which means that people, small businesses, social enterprises, charities can come in and can ask for something that they need. So that can be anything from, we need a new coffee machine for our coffee shop that we've opened, or we need property or land, or we need something built, or we need labour for 5 days, you know, to come and do this repair work on the building that we've managed to secure. So like I'd said, this is only in the kind of beginnings of the launch, but so far it has been such a success already. I'd like to mention, and you'll see it if you go onto the link, that Whale Arts have put through an ask, which is already being worked on. We met with local contractors the other day who were doing walk round of the area, where we're trying to get a more accessible area around about our building, just to put you in the picture there. And it's really exciting to be able to see that, and that's an example of a charity organisation putting through a request and then it being followed up. It obviously will really help as well with contractors when they come in and get tender for, you know, buildings or land or property or whatever, and it gives a portal for them to be able to say, well, actually, what does this community need, without having to go through huge and really long community consultations, which are obviously great, but not always having the time for. So please, if you've got any questions about that, I would be more than happy to try and support you, or I can direct you to my colleagues over at Capital City Partnerships who have much more intel and information on that, but I would be more than happy to help if anyone has anything that they would like to ask about it. The next thing to talk about, sort of stemming from that as well, is another thing that we have got involved in as a project. This is sort of similar to the community asset transfer things that we were talking about with Whale. In Wester Hales, you may already know there's a regeneration project going on in West Edinburgh, but there's a huge part of it is the local place plan in Wester Hales. There's a lot of restructuring going on. They're looking at the roads, they're looking at the plaza, looking at the canal side, looking at buildings, looking at all the local authority buildings and how everything can be a bit more fit for purpose in Wester Hales. And we've, as a project, we've been very fortunate to get a lot of involvement in that. Personally, and in my role, I've been doing a lot of community consultations to do with that, from the community wealth building perspective. And unfortunately, I've had a lot of interactions with the council and with the contractors, and I'm sort of that in-between person to be able to connect everyone together and to hopefully have people feel like they're being heard. I think I can quite confidently say we've all had a feeling before where we've felt like we've not been heard. And that can be one of the worst things that you can feel. And it's particularly important when huge projects like this are going on to be able to have your voice heard. And that's part of the role that we have put in here in the Community Wealth Building Project Lead, and that I'm really making a big focus on personally. Just that I've only got a couple other things to say, thank you, but other things that we have been involved in have been some events. So at Broomhouse, they had a street party towards the end of last year, which was a phenomenal event. Actually, it brought together lots of people in the community, lots of community groups, organisations and small businesses, and that was linked to Broomhouse Space Hub. So we went along there and we managed to do some engagement and hear some people's opinions there, which was fantastic. Similarly, the Murrayburn Hills Linden Drumbryden project, which is part of the regeneration project, we went along there and managed to have some community consultations there. And like I'd already mentioned, the regeneration project as a whole is something we've been involved in too. The next thing I would really like to mention is, and again, something that Barry has already touched on, but we are hosting a community consultation and information event on Friday, the 4th of March. Now, this is linked with Social Investment Scotland and Community Shares Scotland. And the idea is that we would like to engage with the community, engage with small groups, engage with people who are interested in starting businesses or who have just started businesses, and try and share some support that's already out there. We'll obviously be talking about grants, we'll be talking about shares and you know, the positive impact that it can have to get involved in community shares, but also loan processes and options that are out there. And we would really encourage as many people to come as possible if relevant. We would love people to come as nominated people for an organisation or for a company, or who can go back to their organisation and then say something. There's a link coming into the chat again, which is a link to sign up to the event. It's going to be at Space in Broomhouse. And there's also a very kindly asked, or Duncan's very kindly accepted, to send a tile, which has a lot of information about the event. Please as well, if you'd like to send that to people or share it, you know, if you yourself have a social media platform for your business, it would be greatly appreciated if it could be shared. And please feel free to send the information to anyone that you think it would be relevant to. Equally, if you'd like to get in touch with me for more information, or for me to get into contact with people, I would be more than happy to do so. So it was actually really encouraging to hear, Barry, that you said you had some really good trainings and sessions with SS and CSS before. So that's made me a bit more excited about it actually. So thank you for that. The Community Wealth Building Project Lead role also involves a little bit of communications and marketing. We also then built in an extra half day, so that I now work 4.5 days, so that I can do the communications for Go Beyond as a whole. This has been really supportive because it means I've got a lot more time now to share more information about the small area networks that we work with, and also the community wealth building exciting stuff that's going on. Part of that is that I run a blog, which is on the website. It's available on our website. I also run the social medias, and there's a newsletter that we have not long started. The January edition has just come out, and Duncan's going to pop a link in the chat about that as well. If you would like to click on that and have a read, please feel free to subscribe. Or equally, if you want to pop your email address in with a note, I can take that and I can add you to the subscription list, and you would be on it for the next time. The newsletter brings in lots of information for the whole Southwest Edinburgh network. I'm also happy to take recommendations if anyone would like to be involved in the newsletter. I would love to share your information, and I also always do a community wealth building update on that as well. So there's lots of information there, along with links to all our social medias and also the website and the blog. The last thing I'd like to speak about is one of the things that we wrote into the plan when we were creating this role, is that for all the small area networks that we work with, so the 6 that I mentioned at the beginning, we have allocated some money for those networks to use for themselves, either to pay for people's time. As you'll know, a lot of people are volunteers for these kind of things, for forums, etc. So the option is there to pay for people's time, or to use creatively for their local area with a community wealth building theme in mind. Now, this has actually been really exciting, and it's the thing I'm going to be focusing on the most coming up, because most of the people I've spoke to so far, and we've got a couple more to speak to, have decided to either run a community wealth building event where we will invite people along, we'll invite small groups, community groups, local people, small businesses, social enterprises, charities, all along with also people from the council, potentially some people from the government that we've got ties in with, and also the police, etc. So we could have a community event and we could pay people to come and actually be present there, which would be a fantastic thing for community wealth building. This is exactly what it would be all about. So that's one option. And the other one is that we're considering thinking about a small grants process. I'm mentioning this at the moment because it's in discussions just now, and I would love to be able to give people more information about that once we've solidified it. But that's another idea that we've got, to be able to pay some people to start up their business, or to do something for their business, or to buy materials, or to pay themselves for X amount of time, or going training for their new business. And as you can maybe tell, we're very excited about this, because this will really be able to report and feedback on this, and hopefully it will impact some people really, really positively. We recognise we've only now got until August for this to go ahead, but we're full steam ahead, and we're working really hard on that at the moment. That's me come to the end of everything I wanted to say. Thank you so much for all your time. I really appreciate it, and it was lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gemma. That felt infectious. Just so much excitement, I think, in terms of what's going on in Edinburgh. I hope that's a good word to use. I mean it in the positive sense. I think it's in the last few years perhaps been quite a negative word, but I certainly don't mean it in that way at all. And you'll see in the chat, lots of people have got questions for you, particularly around the community engagement side as well, because I think for those of us who work at community level, sometimes hard to reach individuals and groups, can be quite difficult to get their voices. So I'll perhaps come to that question in a bit. I'm going to come back to Mhairi first, if I may, just with a couple of questions that have been in the chat. And you'll have seen one of the first questions was really about housing associations. So we know in our work at Social Enterprise, some of them certainly see themselves more as social enterprises than others, but they all have that much broader remit than just outside the housing agenda. So I just wondered, do you see them as an anchor organisation? And I guess the other bit that was interesting in that question, I thought, was also, do you think they see themselves as anchor organisations?
Yeah, so I would absolutely say they're anchor organisations for sure. We've kept our commission, so our major anchor institutions, quite small and tight at the moment, to kind of really focus initially on that work with the major kind of public sector. However, we do have aspirations to widen that out to a wider, broader anchor network that would definitely involve housing associations. And I think that's quite interesting when you say, do they see themselves as that? I've got to say, I think there's quite a lot of work in parts of England as well about housing associations really taking it forward. So I think there's work in Manchester and kind of regions around there, Birmingham as well, about particular housing associations and their role as an anchor, and really taking that forward. So see, I think in broad terms, it would be yes, and they would see the clear parallels with it and what they do in their close engagement with individuals. And I think there's been some work in Birmingham about linking up with other anchors in terms of where they might have a need for employment and looking to recruit, and the housing associations being able to support with that. So there's great precedence there in terms of that, and hopefully we'll be able to engage more directly with our local housing associations as we kind of look to widen out that anchor network.
Thank you. I think that links in quite nicely as well with another question that someone asked about the anchor networks, and completely understand that sense of needing focus at the early stages, but perhaps looking to broaden out those groups. How do you envisage working perhaps with both the existing and potentially future anchor organisations in terms of creating those local opportunities?
So we've got some work underway at the moment, and working regionally, focusing on a few of the pillars at the moment. So procurement, land and assets, and fair employment, and getting those anchors together to work out what we can do to add value and create the opportunities in there. Again, those are quite kind of early days. It's taken quite an awful lot of work to get, not necessarily to get the anchors on board. There's been a lot of appetite for that. It's to kind of get resource in place, get the right people around the table, and get a kind of thorough understanding from each of the anchors about what these approaches mean for them. So what it means for a council isn't exactly the same as what it means for NHS and how they can kind of take it forward. So it's about finding that common ground, and where we can work together to add value. So like I said, one of the things that we've kind of got going on at a regional level is looking at where the opportunities for below £50,000 spend might be, and supporting some of the anchors in developing their knowledge of the local supply base, in order to be able to direct that spend towards them and invite them to tender. Other things I mentioned as well about identifying underutilised assets. So that's just very much in motion at the moment, in terms of looking about where those opportunities are for the anchors, and trying to identify what the demand is from the community side, and the business side, as well, in terms of how they could use those assets. So still kind of early days with the partners around the table, but lots of promising work for the future.
No, it's encouraging. I guess the under 50k is about them being able to use things like the quick quote system in terms of procurement. And if that's all jargon language to anyone that's listening, I'd suggest if you do any work either with partnership for procurement or look at the supplier development programme, they'd be able to talk to you a bit more, and you could get that understanding of the quick quote system, and getting onto things like the public contracts portal, which is really important in terms of being involved with all of that. So thank you. Great to see those opportunities coming through. I think there's another question come through for you, but I'm going to come back to it if I may, and I'm going to see if I know Gemma's been busy putting up the links to the event. I don't think the original one quite works. So good work there, Gemma, in the background. I just wanted to pick up on this point about community engagement. I was really encouraged hearing your presentation, which we hadn't known that this would be the case, but I think Mhairi talked about community banks, and some of the data you were showing us was that actually people wanted that, which is always really nice. And you'd obviously got a lot of responses from people in the community, or people were coming through on the survey, and that's encouraging to see. But there's a particular question of how did you really go about that, and how did you try and make sure that perhaps voices of people that don't often come forwards? I think we've all worked in communities where we hear a lot of the same kind of voices, but how do we really reach the voices that perhaps don't always come forwards? And I wondered if we could pick your brains a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That was something that was a really predominant thought for us. Not to bore anyone, but my background's in health and social care, and I've worked in disability services for over 8 years. So for me coming in, it was quite strong and powerful that we need to be able to be heard, which is easier said than done. You can have the best will and intent in the world, and it can be really, really tricky to reach some, the hard to reach people for whatever reason that is. Whale Arch is for anyone who doesn't know Whale Arch is a charity embedded, very securely embedded in Wester Hailes, and they are so inclusive, and really work really hard to try and get the opinions of everyone and reach as many people as possible. They've got a lot of programmes running. Score Scotland are based in our building, so that's really fantastic. to reach the various ethnic groups that are in the surrounding area. So to answer your question, sorry, I'm babbling. To answer your question, one of the things that we did with the survey is that we made it available in 10 different languages. Now, we would have made more, but we couldn't. Forms only allows you to make it available in 10. However, there were a few occasions where we were asked if it could be made available in a different language, and we would just substitute one out, one in until the form was complete. And we found that there wasn't huge amounts of responses filled in that way, but there were some. So for me, that was a win. You know, if you hear one person's voice that you may not have heard had you not done that, then for me that was really important. One of the other things we did was we offered an interpreting service. So I went out into, for example, Westside Plaza. I went out for 2 full days separately. With surveys, I had paper surveys, I had QR codes for surveys, I had the link to the website, various different things. Some people hand wrote them at the time, some people I asked the questions and I wrote the answers, or they did, you know, just depending what their preference was. And there we had interpreters available to come to support if we needed, so that was quite helpful. Again, it was one person who couldn't speak every language, but again, it was another option to have. Also had a colleague who speaks different languages who came along as well for support. We also went to local community centres, we went to libraries, we put flyers through as many businesses' doors as we possibly could. And we really did try. I would like to say we would have wanted to do more. In future, we'll keep trying to do more, because we do recognise that it is really important to hear from as many people as we possibly can. But the thing that worked best, I would say, was having me and my colleagues based in a venue and just having an open table for people to come speak to us. Some people didn't want to do the questionnaire, which I understand. It was huge. It was a long survey, but even just writing people's opinions down was fantastic. Or hear it, just listening, just standing and listening to people. We found that really effective. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry if it doesn't.
No, definitely. And I have to say, incredibly impressed. It's a lot of languages to get across, and really shows that sense of pardon the pun, but going beyond as well, and actually we have a duty, I think, to try and do that as well. So while I say it's going beyond, actually it's really important that we do that as community organisations where we can, and great to have seen you take that approach. So I guess in terms of the most effective, it's about going out to where people are and finding them and making it as easy. And I guess, like you said when you were talking about the survey, not everyone wants to do that, but you found it's better to get something than nothing. So, you know, being really open to what those responses are as well. So brilliant. I'm going to come back, if I may, just Mhairi, I'm conscious we're at 25 past. So if anyone listening has got any last questions they want to put in, now is the time. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask Mhairi just one more question. And I guess it's that, is there sometimes a tension? And in my experience, sometimes there is, and increasingly there's not, but is there sometimes a tension perhaps between some of those larger private businesses and the community wealth building agenda, and that balance of reinvestment in communities? And how do you work with that? And I've seen some great companies where that doesn't seem to be an issue, but we still, I guess, in our sector wonder, is there still some organisations that find that a much more challenging environment to operate in? I wondered if you got a perspective on that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think that it also comes down to about asking people to change the way that they traditionally do things as well. Where, you know, immediately, you know, there's been a lot of excitement around that, but then actually when it comes to fundamentally doing things differently, that's when tensions start to come around. But what we've taken so far about putting it to private organisations about the benefit to them in terms of local workforce, and you've got a local workforce with quality jobs, then you're going to be better employees, the value of local supply chains as well, reaching sustainability goals. So how community wealth building works for them, and kind of taking that approach as well. And we've actually had a lot of good experience in terms of, we've been revising our community benefits policy, and revising the KPIs within there to better meet the the aspirations of community wealth building, and that's been received really positively on the whole, I think. And there's a lot of private sector organisations out there that are keen to have a role and contribute, and sometimes just don't know the best way to go about doing that. And obviously community benefits is one kind of way into doing that, and making sure it's actually relevant to the local area. The community wish list, which is tied to the community benefits, is another way, so it gets closer to the communities as well, and the particular needs. So yeah, those tensions are there, and I'm sure they will continue to be as we take forward our work and go to the kind of the later years of the strategy. But so far, I think there's a willingness to work there, and there's willingness to do something that's actually meaningful for the communities, and it's about kind of signposting how that's done in particular. So time will tell as we get through, but like I say, it's community wealth building as an approach is growing nationally, so this kind of language and narrative approach is going to become more prominent and recognised as well, and hopefully strengthened by a Community Wealth Building Act as well.
Definitely, and I think we'll see it, come through when things like the 10-year economic strategy come out, and I think, like you say, it's really growing momentum. So I haven't seen anyone put any last questions in the chat, so I'm going to finish with my last question, if I may, to you both. And I've really enjoyed today's webinar. I think our earlier webinars on community wealth building very much focused on what it was, on the 5 pillars and talking about it, and I've loved actually seeing a bit further down the line what's actually happened as a result of taking that approach. So my question is, where do you hope we might be in 2 years' time on this approach in your community? And I'll perhaps come to you, Gemma, and then finish off with Mhairi, if I may.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. That's a great question, actually. I'll answer personally, but also on behalf of the project. Would like to see, really, it would be great to be able to say, oh, I would love to see so many more lands and spaces being used productively and socially, and yes, we really hope for that, we really push for that. But the biggest place I would like to see us being is being more inclusive, people actually being able to feel like they're being heard in their own local community, working a lot closer as well with the 20-minute neighbourhood idea, trying to re-bring people together. That's something that I've learned from working predominantly in Western Hills, because that's where my office is based, is that the local people really want to be involved and really want to be together. Not everyone, don't get me wrong, but really want to be together and just don't know how to make that happen again. They miss it. They talk about the past and how it used to be and how it's not like that anymore. And for me and for the project, we would really love to see it taken a bit more of that direction.
That's a really interesting perspective, and I wonder how it fits quite well then with things like the 20-minute neighbourhoods, and even that sense of, I think, during COVID, as people have come together, the one benefits that people have really seen that value in local community again, and home working and just how we're going to live is going to change some of that. So a great aspiration there, Gemma, and I think you're right, people, when they get the chance, do want to, in the main, work together. Mhairi, any final thoughts just from you?
Yeah, I think absolutely agree with what Gemma's saying as well. And for me, it's about that inclusive aspect, and making people feel that they're being heard, that they can be involved in their local community and they're getting the benefit from it. Obviously, community wealth building is really long term, and we've got that long-term aspiration to reconfigure the local economy. But I think within a couple of years, if we could get more a wider network involved, and really involving the local community, and local communities can see that they are able to take advantage of these opportunities and grow their aspirations, their businesses. I'd love to see more social enterprises, more diverse forms of business in North Ayrshire. I think that would be a fantastic achievement in the short term.
Thank you. I think their aspirations, certainly, again, we can really all share. I think this is a brilliant initiative, I have to say, and I think we all hold out a lot of hope that this newer approach to local economic strategies is going to be really important for our communities and our broader economy moving forward. So thank you both for joining us. I can see Duncan's just put up the link to our Vimeo chat. You'll find a whole range of webinars. You'll probably find our last webinar on community wealth building. It'd be interesting actually to compare, because I can definitely see that change in terms of things moving forwards from today. So I'll leave this open just for a second in case any of you want to click on any of the links, but I'd just like to say thank you to everyone attending. And for the question that just came in about the Outer Hebrides, I haven't ignored it. I think it's there, and I'll leave it there, Mhairi, if you can see if there is anything. It's about franchising to the Outer Hebrides, but I would say the Outer Hebrides is also a community wealth building area, so I'd very much encourage you to get in touch with the team that are leading that work. And I was saying last week I've been practicing my Gaelic at our bilingual webinar the other week, but I'm going to have to call it Outer Hebrides Council just for today, because I haven't practiced saying it, which is terrible. But I definitely recommend that you look up some of that work as well. So a big thank you to both of our speakers and to everyone for attending, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much. See you next week.